Got it. Okay, so recording's on. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces. For those people who don't know me, I'm Lynne Iser. Been a part of this community for a while. And it's nice to see all these other community people and some new faces. So welcome to our first Lunch and Learn. We called it Lunch and Learn to accommodate the busy schedules that many of us have, including GJC. So if you have your lunch, go ahead and munch away at it. And otherwise, we'll catch something later on. A couple of technical notes and requests. The program is being recorded, and we'll send that out in the link in a follow-up letter if you want to listen again or share it with somebody else. Please stay muted, except when you're recognized or ready to speak, so we don't have background noise that kind of interferes with what's happening. You can use your electronic hand, which is located at the bottom of your screen. When we ask for questions, if you want to raise your hand to me, I recognize that hand will not only show who you are, but will stick you up to the very top of the screen. So we'll be able to have a natural cue, excuse me. There's a request that if you need to move your device, please shut down the video because it's a bit of motion sickness for some people as you're walking around. And out of courtesy to our presenters, don't use the chat during presentations because that's distracting. Instead, please listen, take your notes, and be prepared to put any questions into the chat when you're invited to do so at the end of the presentation. And be patient with Rivkah, who is our Zoom master today and is learning to be a Zoom master. So what are we doing today? Well, we're really, really lucky to have Jane Eleey here, and welcome, Jane. I saw you in one of those Zoom rooms a few minutes ago, Zoom boxes, who is from Penn's Village and is here with us today to share their experiences and what they've learned having a aging village in our city in Philadelphia. Tobie Hoffman will be in conversation with her for about 30 minutes, and after that time, we'll have a chance for questions from the rest of us. About 12:30, we'll take a 5-minute quick bio break, and after the break, we'll share an excellent pre-recorded conversation. I think it's about 15 or 18 minutes with Barbara Adolphe, the president of Northwest Village Network, and Rivkah Walton about NVN's experiences. And so hearing from these other two villages, Rivkah will then provide us with a bit of information about the history and vision for Shtetl 2.0. We'll introduce our working group conveners. We'll have another opportunity for questions, and we'll end at 1:30, and we'll send everybody follow-up materials that is on our list. Okay, so can we just go back to having all the Zoom faces and not have the spotlight? Rivkah, can you do that?
We can try. Yes.
You can put me up, you can take me down. Let's see.
Let's see.
Here I am. I did it. Just want to put us
that's-
on gallery view. Okay, I did that because I want to see who's in the Zoom room. So if this is your first meeting with Shtetl 2.0, raise your hand. Hey, there's one. Hi, Sheila, and there's a few others. I see Karen. It's hard for me to go to both screens. But welcome to your first meeting. We're glad that you're here. We're also now on our email list, so that's good. If you're currently helping on one of Shtetl's 2.0 committees or teams, raise your hand. So good. See Merle and Barbara and good. Cindy, a few other faces here. So thank you very much. I'll raise my own hand. Tobie. So we're beginning to form our own community with folks that are helping us move along. If you want to age in the Northwest Village community, raise your hand. All right, good. If you took a walk before today's meeting, raise your hand. All right, I see a few faces. And if you intend to take a walk after today's meeting, Yes, not to be missed. Okay, wonderful. We're about ready to begin. So we're going to move along as we have some excellent presentations today. Before we do, let's just have a bit of our own kavana or centering. So take a moment to settle into your seats and feel comfortable with your computer screen, your Zoom screen. Open your ears. We sometimes call it devoted listening, like really attentive listening to what you're going to hear from Jane and Tobie. And let's just take a moment to think back upon this week. So it's been a hard week. It's been a hard week. We're mourning the passing of two very beloved and engaged community members, Bob Prishak from Mishkan Shalom and Ellen Bernstein from Germantown Jewish Center. They are both enthusiastic, hardworking people. And happily, thankfully, they each received a lot of loving and thoughtful attention in the last days of their lives, at the end of their lives. So what a blessing that we live in a community that is already ripe and wanting to do more. So may our work together inspire us and help us to overcome any impediments that we might have, our inner critic, any thoughts that we're not good enough, we can't do this, we can, so that we can use our best thinking, our best resources. We can open our minds and hearts to what we can contribute to this Shtetl, this community that we're wanting to build together, so that we can strengthen this web of connection, and so that we can provide us all with support and nurturing and caring and engagement with the wider world as elders, as older adults, as aging individuals, as aging Jewish people, as we come through this last journey of our lives, hopefully together. So we have Jane here, and I think Dick is going to introduce Jane.
Thanks, Lynn. As you probably know, Shtetl 2.0 is an evolving project that has been guided by a growing planning committee since last spring, with the objective of creating structures that will allow, quote, Jewish elders and friends, unquote, to age in community in Northwest Philly. The Planning Committee has recently embraced a very successful village model for mutual support programs and services. The oldest village in Philadelphia is the very successful Penn's Village in Center City, and it has a tiered membership system that may fit our needs. So we have invited Jane Eleey, its longtime executive director and a good friend of mine, to be with us today. Jane, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
Can I ask Tobie and Jane to please raise your electronic hands so I can find you and spotlight you? Thank you.
Let's see here. Hold on. Oh, here we go.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'm noticing that Lynne is still pinned as the main.
Yep. Thank you.
There we go.
I'm trying to. Can one of the other co-hosts please spotlight Jane? I can't reach that part of her. This is challenging. Okay, there we go. Thank you.
Are we set?
We're good.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Good morning, Jane.
Good morning, Tobie, and everyone else.
Welcome.
Thank
Welcome
you.
to our first Shtetl 2.0 Lunch and Learn community meeting. And we totally appreciate you taking your time of your busy schedule, your family schedule. So thank you again. And so let me just start and kind of give people a sense of who you are, because you are have a long tenure as the executive director at Penn's Village, which is in Center City, and you'll talk more about that later. And because of that, you've become the local authority on villages in general. It sounds like you have a lot of. We're going to pick your brain a little bit to get some more information, and of course about Penn's Village, which which we see as a good model for us. So we'll talk about half an hour together and then have some time, about 10 to 15 minutes for questions from the people in the room. So let's start from the beginning, talk about villages in general. So the village movement, which was usually credited to seniors living in the Beacon Hill neighborhood of Greater Boston, is that correct?
Yes.
Which was 2002. So what needs were those people, those pioneers, seeking to address, and what were some of the problems they were trying to solve?
So I'm not sure I can answer that question, but I can just say that they were, I guess, experiencing some issues that made them think about whether they could stay in their own homes or whether they needed to move elsewhere to, as they say, to a higher level of care or to be with their children elsewhere or whatever. And several people said, well, we're here, we know each other, what can we do for each other? And that's really what got the ball rolling.
Well,
don't know
clearly
the
there was a
specifics.
need
Clearly.
because it caught on, and now there are over 300 different kinds of villages in an umbrella organization. It's called Village to Village Network. And so, are there any core common elements among them that you've seen, and why have they been so successful?
Well, everybody or most people want to stay in their own homes for as long as possible as they age. And there's lots of national data on all of that. And I think that, the feeling was that through this mutual support of neighbors helping neighbors, that could be accomplished. And it's not a new concept of neighbors helping neighbors. We all do it, but we've never done it back then. We weren't doing it in any kind of a structured way. It was really, who you knew, you called your friend if you needed something, or you offered help if you knew someone was sick or had some challenges. So I'm not even sure how they came to build the structure. I wasn't here then. But I can tell you how it came about here, which was really modeled on that. I would say, to answer the question about what do they all have in common, I think all of the villages saw the need for social connection. And of course, now there's all this publicity for what happens with isolation, and that, loneliness is like, worse than smoking 7 packs of cigarettes a day. There's all this, data about all of that. So, early on, people recognized the social component of what was needed in building this structure. But there was also recognition that, some people need more than socialization, are looking for more, and that some of that is available in the community, but some isn't. And where it is, that people don't always know where to find it or how to get to it or how to access it. And so there was also the recognition that helping people connect with the community resources would be of benefit. And that some of these neighborly kinds of activities could be scaled up, whether it's transportation or accompanying someone to a medical appointment or doing yard work or whatever. So that, and that's sort of the case around the country, that the villages are doing a little of each of those things: resource sharing, face-to-face services, in-person services, and socialization / education, if you will, / workshops. Some do more, some do less. Some have staff, some don't have staff, some have part-time staff like we do. The models are different everywhere all across the country. Some could be in a high-rise building somewhere. Some can be a community. Some are part of a network of villages statewide, or in Washington, D.C. wide. And some of them have structures that organize the villages that are in, in that kind of a cohort. And some of them are part of other organizations. East Falls Village here is really part of something called the Community Council, so they're not their own 501c3. There are villages that are part of Jewish Family and Children's Services and other social service agencies. So that's sort of not quite answering the question, but gives you the flavor.
No, that's totally the flavor. But so I'm wondering if any of those are particularly relevant for a group like us that's kind of a village under construction, something that you might point to that in terms of what we need to think about even more as we're getting started.
Right. Well, on the previous call and some of my emails, I've said it's really important to use the resources that Village to Village Network has, because they can help you identify another village that could be a mentor to you, and that would be, would embody some of the things that you're considering. I haven't signed up to be a mentor because I haven't had the time, although I'd be interested in doing it. But there are villages that, have more staff and have more capability to do that mentoring. Many of the villages, I don't know proportionally, but many of the villages have a non-tiered structure. So everybody who joins, whether they want to get services, whether they want to be volunteers, whatever, they're all the same. Other villages have tiers like we do, and some villages don't consider their volunteers as members. We do. We didn't always, but we do. And that's kind of also a decision that that you need to think about, is how you want to use volunteers, where you want to recruit them. Do they have to come from within your community or not? Do they need to be paying members? Do you want to have paying members? I mean, that's even a larger question.
Right.
I mean, some villages don't have paying members. It's all free. And some have very, low fees, and some have, many like us have subsidies for folks who can't afford the fee structure that's in place. So those are other considerations.
So there's different kinds of membership levels and
Right,
in terms
right.
of tiers. So what about sources of funding and sizes?
So many of the villages, including us, approach about 50% of their budget from membership fees. Some, do get a fair number of grants. We have a couple. It's difficult to get foundation money, for those of you know anything about fundraising from foundations, if you're not serving a significant number of people and a significant number of folks who are lower income. And some villages, the village concept is a pretty middle class concept, not entirely. Excuse me. Sorry, one second. And the village concept itself is unfortunately very white. And that's been a challenge for villages, and it is a challenge for fundraising as well. Many villages are figuring out, what they can do about both increasing the number of low-income folks and increasing diversity in their membership, but not all. And some actually have government contracts where they are sort of the local go-to organization that does services for older adults. There's a village in Colorado that's multi-city and they have, as I understand, government grants to do that. We do not.
Is that possible in Pennsylvania to have that kind of grant? I'm just asking.
I can't imagine. I mean, the main organizations here are come through the Area Agency on Aging. Here it's Philadelphia Corporation on Aging. And some of the villages have relationships with the local, what they call AAAs, Area Agencies on Aging. We have a relationship we're not taking referrals from them. We do send them referrals. We have a board member who works for them. You know, we've had training from them, that kind of thing, but the resources for contracting, I mean, we never really explored it.
Thank you. You know, I think we're starting to talk about Penn's Village, so which was founded in 2008. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
more or less
And I know
7,
it's
8.
changed a lot since then. So let's just get a snapshot of the village and how many members and
Sure,
age range.
sure. So we count everybody, as I mentioned, volunteers, but also businesses as members, and we count individuals rather than households. Well, we count households too when we do budgeting, but because people join by household. But it's about 400 folks. Most of our folks, we've never really had a lower age limit. At one time, we were also serving disabled folks who were younger. That's not so much the case. We probably have one person now who's under 60. She's retired and has a chronic illness, but by and large, we're mostly older than 60, many in the 70s, and some in the 80s and 90s, and one who's 100 and one who's turning 100.
Congratulations to them.
Yes, one of our 100-year-olds is still volunteering for us. She's doing check-in calls with somebody. And was for a long time reading to somebody, you know, pre-COVID, then continued on FaceTime or Zoom, and continued until the person was blind, and she continued this for probably 4 or 5 years, and then the member died, so she could, you know, she really stopped, of course, and we didn't have anyone else for her to pick up with, although she may yet.
Let me just ask you. You've mentioned different people who are different groups that are members. Can you maybe dive a little more
Yes,
into the tiered
yes.
membership?
Yes, so the idea was that not everybody wants to join for services. People want different things. So we have what we call sort of an entry level. Well, let me say there are 3 levels of membership. There's villager, which is what we call the full ball of wax. You can do everything that the Penn's Village has to offer. There are neighbors, it's another level, and then there's a level called contributor. And we have some of them are volunteers as well, but we also have volunteers who've never paid anything, that their commitment is their time, and we now call those partners. And there's no obligation for somebody who wishes to just be a volunteer without paying. There's no pressure. And there's no pressure to join at any specific level. It depends what people want. So some people just want to get to know us, and they come in as contributors. And that means that they can come to all of our workshops. They can come to our social events. And even before that, someone who's wanting to get to know us can join us and come to some of our workshops without joining. So we have more or less managed that people can come 3 times to a workshop or a program, after which we say you really need to join. It's not fair to the other members. So anyone here could do that, and we have some interesting things coming up, and you can see those on our website. Anyway, that's the big.
Yeah, let me just say. So you mentioned the full membership. It's called
Villager.
Villager. So what services do you offer to
Okay.
those members?
So most of the villagers are joining because they want this volunteer delivered services. Some join just because they think they want to support us that way, and they never ask for services. But most, I wouldn't say most, many are doing it because they want the services, and the services are what neighbors do for each other already. So transportation, picking up groceries, picking up prescriptions, you know, helping with small household chores. Somebody wanted help putting an IKEA bookshelf together. somebody who was home from the hospital, she needed her meals sort of organized in her refrigerator and freezer, and sort of set up for recovery. She was living by herself, and she needed help just for a couple of weeks. Not hands-on help. We don't do bathing, dressing, any of that kind of stuff. I will say that we will walk with people. So sometimes somebody, has had a procedure or whatever and needs to walk but can't walk by themselves. We will walk with someone, hold their arm, that kind of thing. But no, not the kinds of things where you really need to hire what I would call a professional to help you. We can't help transfer people. So somebody who can't move from their bed to a chair, it wouldn't be appropriate for volunteer delivered services. That said, we might hook them up with an agency that could provide that, and we still might go in and do companionship services. And we do a ton of companionship. That's our biggest service. And that's pretty much, visitor once a week, sometimes more often, sometimes several visitors. And it's an ongoing one-on-one service where it's the same person week after week. So, and it could be other kinds of things. It could be, somebody's home from the hospital needs their the kitty litter changed, or not so easy with a dog where they have to go out regularly, but we do some pet care, not a lot, but we can do that. And as I said, there are things that you would do for a neighbor. And sometimes it's like an odd thing. We had somebody, she wanted to play Scrabble in French, and could we hook her up? And we did.
That's wonderful. I want to take a step back, Jane, just for a second, because
sure.
they're wonderful examples. I'm sure you have lots of examples of like real neighbor to neighbor contact that we could benefit from. I didn't really get a chance to ask you, like, what is the geographic area that you draw from, and do you have a specific area for
We do.
different tiers? Yeah.
Yes. So river to river, basically Washington Avenue to Girard Avenue. One can be a contributor and not live in our area, and you can certainly be a partner. We have somebody who lives in your area who's one of our drivers, and he likes to come into town and wants to come into town. And he wanted to work with us as opposed to one of the other villages, and so be it.
So it's the top tier members who have access in that area and need to be from that area?
Yes, villagers need to be, anybody who wants services has to live in our area, because that's what the volunteers are signing up for. They're not signing up to help people all around the city. They want to serve their community, the people, some of whom they know and some of whom they get to know and become friendly with. And you can get services at the neighbor level as well, on a sort of a tryout basis. So we tell people you can try out a couple of services a year as a neighbor. And that's also helpful for people who are just not sure whether they want the services. Typically what they ask for, and there's not a lot of that, but typically what they ask for is help with technology. We do a lot of tech help. Or a one-time pickup from a medical procedure where you can't go home alone. And, it may be with it via a driver, but it may also be somebody who just picks them up and, walks them home if it's nearby, or takes a bus or an Uber or cab and comes home with them and gets them settled. And we're seeing more of that, and actually are going to promote that as a reason to get connected with us, because it's a problem for people who live alone and if they don't have family around.
Let's move a little bit more to the structure itself.
Yes.
I know you have a board and staff, and talk a little bit about the committee structure too.
Okay, so we have 3 part-time staff, and everybody has different skills and different responsibilities, although we back each other up. And we do have, as of last year, succession planning, so that if I step down, somebody else knows what to do. Because it's very much, people get connected with the faces that they see. So, you know, people know me, people know my co-director, who was, you know, came on as, we called it operations manager, but she's really co-director. And then we have a person who's more the techie person, manages our database. And I do have, I said at the last call, it's really important to figure out if you're going to, you got to have a presence on the web. You need to have a website. You need to have a database at some point to manage the flow. And we use something called Club Express, which many villages use. There's now competition. There's another one called, I forget, totally forget. But anyway,
You told us the last time, but we can look at, yes.
yeah. Anyway,
Helpful Village.
I do think that that's important to have at some point.
How,
And
so how many hours are
we're
you?
just under, the three of us are just under almost 1.5 full-time equivalents. But it comes and goes. I mean, I was hired at 20 hours and I went up to 24, and then I went to 28, then I came down again and I'm back at 20 for personal reasons. And the others have been pretty much each 15 hours a week to sometimes 20.
And so you have a board, and I know you have committees, is that correct?
Correct. So we have a board. We have just gotten new leadership. The board currently meets only 4 times a year. It's really insufficient. And we have what we have been calling a governance committee that's under review as we speak as part of our new strategic plan. It's really an operations group, and that may be renamed as that, but it's basically the officers and a couple of other of the board and a couple of other board members who wanted to be more engaged on a week-by-week basis. And we meet every second week for an hour to talk about, you know, whatever the issues are that have come up that need development. In addition to that, we have, I believe it's 7 other committees, so I can never remember them all. Finance, fundraising, program, services, membership and welcoming, communications and marketing, and I'm missing one. Anyway, you get the idea. And some of the committees are very active. So the program committee meets monthly, and does a lot in between. The communications and marketing committee is very active. And they have a subgroup that produces our newsletter called the Village View. And that and that's an important part of our communication is the newsletter. And that is something that, you know, at some point you may want to initiate, or maybe you already have something that you can add your communications to or whatever.
So I want to move, thank you. That's really a great overview of kind of your structure. We talk a little bit about the budget?
Sure.
What's your overall budget?
Yeah, so our budget, I've been here almost 11 years. When I came, I think it was, I don't know, 50, 60,000 a year, something like that. It's now 140 or 150, I have to look it up. And mostly personnel. But there are a lot of other expenses. I mean, the database costs, we do background checks on all our volunteers who do services. So that costs, there's insurance.
You have insurance for the volunteers? Is that what the
For
insurance?
the organization as a whole, you need it for the board and you need it for, you know, yeah. And that's really important. And there's a company that does, I think we got through Village to Village Network, that specializes in nonprofit insurance. There are others around. There's some local ones as well. So, you know, and we have a few expenses that we incur every year. We do have a holiday. We used to call it a holiday party. I guess it's still sort of, you know, it's appetizers and socialization. And then we do an annual town hall, which is an opportunity for dialogue between staff, board members, and our membership. And that's coming up, and we welcome guests to that. So if somebody is interested in that, they're welcome to come. we're not going to record that. It's difficult to record in a, in a bigger space.
Is that on Zoom or is that a Zoom?
No, it's going to be
In
in person. It was in person last year too. The whole business about Zoom and not Zoom and hybrid and all that's, we've been challenged by that. We tried hybrid not terribly successfully. It needs a lot of, you need more people around to manage it, and we don't have the staff to do it, and we don't have enough volunteers to do that either. So we kind of alternate between in-person at the church that donates space to us for both an office and for some of our workshops, and for lately for social events as well, and Zoom. And we're kind of doing a little more Zoom now again, because the winter's been rough with COVID, but now it's getting better again, so it's up and down.
It's a very, very common situation, I think, for
Yeah.
all organizations right now.
Yeah, we do record a lot, and you can go to our website. But I think you have to be a member to look at the recordings. Sorry about that.
So
But
as we're reaching kind of the end of our part of the conversation, any growing pains or current challenges, other thoughts that you want to add to
Right,
this conversation?
right. Well, there's always growing pains, and I think we're kind of at the young adult stage or the older adolescent stage in our growth. We're always worried about budget, and somehow or other, I will tell you, we've made budget every year since I've been here, by hook or by crook. We get a grant here, somebody suddenly gives us $10,000, and we can't believe it. I mean, that's happened to us, sometimes unsolicited. So yes, that's always a worry. We've explored, we do some annual appeals that have brought in money. One year we did sort of a small fundraising event, very small. We haven't brought in a lot of money from events, and we really need somebody to do it. And we're looking at that. But anyway, money's always a challenge in little organizations, I think. We did start an endowment. One of our board members very badly wanted to do that and helped us make that happen, and then seeded it. So we were very pleased with that. Growing pains, the diversity issue is huge for us. We have an outreach person who's helping us reach into the Black community. And, it's a lot of growth is by word of mouth. And so we have to build trust in the community, and particularly in diverse communities. And, we have Chinatown in our community, and we have not reached, well, we've done some outreach, but it's a huge challenge because of the language issues, multiple language issues. So we've really not done much in that area. And we have new leadership, and so we're in transition in terms of how that works, and people's different styles and priorities and all of that. We just completed a 5-year strategic plan, and I do think at some point, if you decide to move forward, that a strategic plan is a helpful tool. We were able to get somebody who charged us a nominal fee when we did it 5 years ago to lead the effort, and then board members help put it into action. And now we've done it a different way. We used, and this is a resource you might consider, I think I may have mentioned it before. There's something called, having a blank. Anyway, it's through the Philadelphia Foundation. It's a national group of volunteers who help organizations work on specific projects. Key Skills Hub it is, but it has another name as well. Anyway, anybody can any nonprofit can access it. I don't think you have to be incorporated or 501(c)(3) yet. And we used somebody through that for strategic planning in this round, and we did not meet in person this time. And they have other resources. They can help you with marketing. They can help you, you can go there and see what's available. So we're in transition. And, you know, I have challenges at home, so I don't know how long I'll be able to continue. We'll see. And, you know, that's sort of what we're looking at right now.
Jane, thank you so much. You've given us a lot to think about, just in terms of structure and in membership and in the kinds of activities that are most needed in your village. And I think we're going to start taking some questions now. And I think what we'll do is, there are already some questions in the chat, which
Okay.
which we'll read, but I think if you have a question you'd like to ask, you can raise your hand by going to the bottom of your screen and looking for the reactions.
I can answer the questions one by one if you'd like. I mean, I can
Yes,
see them.
we'll do. Oh, you can see them.
I
So
can see them.
so
Yeah.
let's.
Shall I?
I see lots of questions. So I know that there was a question. Let me just see if there's any common questions here.
Starts with fees. Ellie Seif, hi, I know you.
So how much is there's cost questions about fees and how much does it cost to be a villager? So maybe fees in
Right.
general. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So villager costs $600 a year per household, regardless of the size of household. We've never had to turn anybody away. We have enough subsidies, at least we've never had, you know, that we've never had to say we can't take you. But they need to show some indication of need because we fundraise for that. It's $200 for neighbor level. It's $100 for contributor. Let me just add, there are different benefits. So a contributor can just do all the social and educational stuff. Neighbors, as I mentioned, can try out 2 services a year, but they can also join affinity groups or what we call special interest groups, and there are about, I think, 8 or 9 of those. They can access the resource database. We don't post it, but they can contact us and say, you know, I need a home care agency. Who do you have? We don't vet those folks, but they're in our database and they've come from other members in the village. And then the villagers can get everything. So services up to 3 a week. Although if there's a special need, like someone's having chemo and they want somebody to go with them every day, we work it out. One thing we were very clear about is because we're not a social service agency and we're dependent on volunteers, we don't guarantee services. We mostly can deliver them. We cannot deliver every ride request. We don't have enough drivers. We can't get enough drivers. People in town don't have cars. So it's a real problem. But that's the fee structure.
And who coordinates these volunteer services?
So that's challenge. So I'm responsible overall for the volunteer services. We have a retired social worker two actually, who help with the vetting process. So all volunteers have to apply. There's an application online that gets submitted to a person who is our volunteer manager, in quotes. She does, when she's in town, and she is not here 4 months of the year. This year was 5 months. She also meets people in person. But when she's away, we have somebody who is here, who's also a retired social worker, who does the in-person interview. We do background checks, we do references, we do driving checks for drivers.
Is there a liability? There was a question about liability.
So yes, so we do, you know, we have insurance, we have a special accident policy, but drivers have to have a certain amount of insurance as required by our insurance company. So, you know, that isn't something everybody wants to take on, but the drivers that we have are willing to share that and take the chances that they haven't, nobody's ever had an accident, thank God, but you know, could happen.
I'm going to let me just move forward. Thank you. That's the liability, I think, and the description of how you recruit and vet volunteers is really important. Betsy, you want to have a question?
Yeah, Hi, Jane, and thank you. This question might seem a little macabre, but this last week we experienced 2 deaths where many people here were involved in the, the end stage of illness and organizing burials and funerals and stuff. So I'm just curious how the death of one of your members is shared, or is this like a secondary community for most of your members so that the primary responsibilities would not fall on the village?
Correct. So we also had a member die about 10 days ago. She was a volunteer, but she was also in one of our interest groups, and her husband notified somebody in the interest group. She had been a companion volunteer, so I notified the companion who was following the progression of her disease. We got the information on the Shiva the same way, and it was shared. The husband gave permission for the folks in that interest group to know about it.
Yeah.
So, and it would be in our, and we do announcement in the, announcement isn't the right word. We do list it in our newsletter, but that's once a month. It happened right before the newsletter came out, so it was timely. And we've not, we have not provided end of life services, but we have members who we happen to have a member who's actually also a business member who has I guess he considers himself a death doula, and people can access him through us if they wish. And we're going to be doing he's doing a program for us coming up on death experiences and what kind of support's out there and that kind of thing. And we've had other presentations around alternative funerals and that kind of thing. But yes, we're not the caregiver in those situations. We might be a companion, but I haven't in my time here. I mean, there have been people who were companions, who provided companionship as it happens. I mean, it wasn't part of a structured end of life service, let's put it that way. They were already a companion.
It's very key for this village, I think, to be thinking about this particular topic. Thank you. Thank you, Betsy, for asking that. Terry, I think you're next.
Thank you. So I just want a little more clarification about the volunteers. Are your volunteers basically within the age range of members? Do you have ever younger people who volunteer to be part of, to be helpful in the community? And do you have to go out and look for volunteers, or do you find them coming to you?
Right. So I would say the preponderance of our members are retired folks, of our volunteers are retired folks, but not all. And we definitely get younger people requesting to be volunteers. We are on the web and we recruit through a website called Volunteer Match. And we've been quite successful with it. We've had a steady flow that way. At the moment, just swamped with requests. We are not eager at this point to take on students. I don't have the time to do the supervision. I have in the past. I've had social work students. I don't go in the office every day anymore. I mean, once, I've always been able to work from home, but when COVID came, obviously we weren't going into the office, and it's not necessary. We have a young person who's probably 20 who, is a student. Sometimes they're just building their resumes, which is excellent, but we don't have the capacity to provide the supervision and the training. That said, we do have some younger persons who are working and, some of them work from home, some of them have flexibility, some are only available on the weekends and evenings. We won't take someone under 18. So we did have a family that the mom wanted to bring all of her family. She had 4 kids, including preschoolers. And I referred her elsewhere. We couldn't do it. And the issue of intergenerational services is one that many villages are addressing successfully. We've not taken it on in a big way. There is something called an organization called Sages and Seekers who approached us. We're not going to do it, but we told people about it. It was in the newsletter, and it's, I think they're in California. We've done some intergenerational projects. We did something with the school social work at Penn that was a pen pal kind of thing. And then when the person who was championing it at Penn left, that kind of fell apart. And recently we've had a younger volunteer paired with an older member for companionship. And the older member felt that the younger person just didn't understand her issues. So, we were surprised. So, it needs work is the bottom line.
Thank you. There was a question online about meeting spaces and where you have workshops.
Yes. So
And then, let me just say,
yeah.
and then Sora, I think you're next, and we'll have probably time for one, maybe 2 more questions.
Right. So historically, we were able to use the church here and there, the church that has so graciously offered us space over all these years that I've been here. But we also, would meet in libraries. We'd try to meet in some of the meeting rooms in some of the high-rise condos and co-ops here. We've approached various organizations in Center City to see if we could use space. It has been a challenge because we want to have it accessible space, and the church is accessible. It has an elevator. Anyway, the church has become increasingly welcoming about that. So now we mostly do things at the church, but we also, the library in Rittenhouse Square, we've partnered with them where we do movies, and it's open to the public. And we have 2 volunteers who've made that happen. We basically don't offer space to the interest groups because we feel that staff should be there when when our members are using the church space, and we just can't always be there. I mean, it's, and one of our employees lives in Ambler, so she's not going to come in, all the time.
Do people meet in other people's homes?
Yes, some do. For a variety of reasons. We have a men's group, very active men's group. One of the people who very much wanted that uses a scooter, and it was easier to offer his home than to go elsewhere. And they went to Zoom, of course, during COVID, and they were Zooming again, but I think they're in person now. Some people, there's a little deli across from the church, and there's space in the back. Some of the groups have met there. They're creative, and some don't meet in person ever.
Wonderful. I'm in awe of the details of the connection you have with your members, the personal connections.
A lot of details in running
We have
a
one more
village.
question, and that's from, is that Sora? Are you? Okay, Sora and Yosef are on with us.
Thank you so much. This is amazing. Oh my God. So my question is kind of big and it probably won't be answered right now, but I want to put it out to our group as well. You have a very robust organization, right? You even have employees, you have all this. And I'm wondering, in the beginning, whatever group it was, what has been the trajectory? Did you start, I hear the mission, and I'm assuming there were values and there were boundaries and all those things. And like, where did you see the most important thing to get organized initially?
So I wasn't around then. but it started in Society Hill.
Mhm.
There were a bunch of people who got together. I'm not sure how that happened. Jefferson was involved, and there were various people who were championing the whole concept.
Mhm.
And one of the people at Jefferson was an attorney, so he knew, that we needed to get bylaws in place and get there was a choice to become a 501c3. Mission statement, all of that kind of stuff was developed early on.
Mhm.
But over time, and bylaws, of course, and over time, the bylaws have been tweaked and continue to be tweaked.
Mhm.
And we have, I mentioned last time, there's an attorney who specializes in nonprofits. His name is forget his first name. Last name is Kramer, and he publicizes he offers a newsletter called Nonprofit Times, which costs, I don't know, $80 a year or something. And we subscribe to that, but he also does specialized workshops on topics of interest. And you do have to pay for those, but one of them is, has to do with the development of bylaws. And one of our volunteers took it, and now they call him once in a while, and he's pretty open about sharing stuff. Anyway, he's a really good resource. So yeah, bylaws, articles of incorporation, which means registering with the state. If you want to be a 501c3, that's a federal registration. Insurance at some point, and some decision on what the leadership structure is going to be. Are you going to, are you going to have a board? What's the board going to look like? And if you are, what skills do you want those board members to bring? So you don't end up with all social workers or all lawyers or, or all teachers. I mean, imagine your village, if you decide to move forward, isn't going to be much different than ours. We have a lot of retired professionals because there are a lot of professionals, at Penn and at Temple and so on who live, have always lived in downtown Philadelphia. And then, what happens here is that people are moving from their bigger houses in the suburbs and they're moving into town, and looking for a community that way. So, I suspect that your members will look not that different than ours.
Right.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Again, thank you for taking the time. You mentioned that you didn't have time to mentor, but believe me, these 2 hours that we have spent with the planning group spent some time with you, and this time you've spent with us has just been really invaluable for us, and
Okay.
grateful that you've been here. Thank you so much. And
All
I think
right.
I
Well,
see
I'm
a lot
happy
of
to-
nodding heads.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer questions. We are having a database problem, and as Rivkah knows, we can't get emails out at the moment to anyone who has Verizon.net or AOL. And they're not going from my work email, but they're going from my personal email. So sometimes I've been able to, move stuff over that way. When they're coming in, I just can't, they don't go out. They don't get delivered. So, but, and I don't mind if somebody calls me if I know they're going to call me. So or they can leave a message. So,
I'm sure we'll be calling on you again, but
Yeah.
again, let's all give a kind of a
You're
nodding and a
welcome.
round of applause
You're
to
welcome.
our
I
friend
try to
Jane.
be as helpful as I can. I don't know all the answers, but I know what we're experiencing. And I will tell you, the bottom line is lots of detail, so much detail, and too much in people's heads. You need to document. And I think you guys are already way ahead of the game on all of that. Your planning is very structured, more so than I think ours was at the beginning.
Wow, thank you
And
for that.
even now, we don't document everything. It's just too time consuming, but
Well, thank you. We're going to turn back to Rivkah. Is
Okay.
that correct? Am I correct in that, or Lynn? Turn it back to Lynn.
so should I hang up?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank you for
day.
inviting me. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
I'm not sure who's in charge of announcing this, but we have a 5-minute bio break. So it is, let me take a look. It is 32 minutes after the hour. That means that we will be back at 5 minutes, at 37 minutes. Leave your screen on, get out of your seat, take a walk, get something to drink, do whatever you need to do. 5 minutes on the dot. Hi, everybody. Welcome back from the break. Rivkah, I think you're going to queue up looks like you're doing that, right? With a lot of attention. So Rivkah's queuing up this pre-recorded conversation she had with Barbara Adolphe. And excuse me if I'm pronouncing that name wrong. Good. I'm giving her a moment to do that. Whenever you're ready, you can make a start. Barbara is with the Northwest Village Network. And she's going to be talking about the synergistic nature of our two organizations, the possible synergistic nature. We don't see these as being competitive. So it would be wonderful to have two villages in the Northwest.
Okay, about to share my screen.
Great.
Well, when I can.
Hmm.
All
I
right.
appreciate Rivkah for doing this.
Yeah,
Hard to do.
all right.
Hey.
Well, good morning, everyone. I am here with Barbara Adolphe, who is the president of Northwest Village Network, NVN for short. And Barbara has valiantly agreed to pre-record a short piece about NVN for our meeting, because Barbara is hoping to be off hiking in the mountains on Sunday when we meet. Although right now she's down with a bug. So it's even more valiant that she has come on and been willing to record this. So we have promised that we will excuse any coughing, sneezing, nose blowing, whatever Barbara needs to do to keep herself going for this conversation between us. As I mentioned, Barbara is president of NVN, but she also has joined some committees for the formation of Shtetl 2.0 and has expressed enormous support for Shtetl 2.0. And Barbara and I have actually known each other for many years, ever since about 2020, when I was working for NVN and she was on the board. So I'll start by mentioning that NVN was founded in 2013 as Mutual Mount Airy. It changed its name at some point and to be more inclusive of the general area, and has grown a great deal since then. So Barbara, why don't you give us a snapshot of what NVN is today? For instance, how many members, from what geographic area do you draw? Let's start there.
First, I want to thank Rivkah for inviting me to do this. I want everybody to get a sense from this current collaboration, this video that we're doing together, that we have every intention to, a very conscious intention to have Shtetl 2.0 and NVN be collaborative endeavors. And I think that's excellent. And like Rivkah said, we have a long, rich history together, and I think that's very helpful. So when NVN changed its name, it was right after it was Mutual Mount Airy. It became the Northwest Village Network to be part of the Village to Village national effort that has villages, I think over 300 right now, all over the country. They say when you see one village, you've seen one village, because we are all so different. So you're going to hear about Penn's Village, if you know about East Falls, any other villages around the country, they are all so different because we meet the needs of our members. And to me, that's what makes NVN so wonderful. In our 2019 strategic plan, the goal was to attain 200 members. We have now surpassed that. We're around 210. We are always, always looking to attract new members. And the reason is because we're an aging population by definition of being a village. And we need younger members and older members to keep us going. And there's some attrition that happens every year. So recruiting and maintaining our membership is one of our top priorities. Geographically, we're really easy. We are along the Germantown Avenue corridor, Germantown, both Mount Airy's, Chestnut Hill, and then we cross over into the suburbs and Winmore, Orland, the Springfield Township area. And our age, we have absolutely no cutoff, high or low. We have members in their 50s, and I believe right now our oldest member is 96. And she is still incredibly active on the board. Her name is Hope Panette, and she has been actually in the newspaper for being a super ager. And did I answer those questions, Rivkah? Are we on to another question?
Good. You're good. The one thing I want to say is when I was working for NVN, people outside the city limits were not actually accepted as members, and that has changed since then. So
what happened was COVID. So during COVID, as everybody knows, life changed, and some things came back the way they were pre-COVID, and some have remained. Zoom is a perfect example. Excuse me. I don't think any of us knew what Zoom was before March of 2020. Now we are all professional Zoom users. We know what to do. And excuse me. And when Zoom happened and all of our programs became available on Zoom, there was nothing in person for a long time. I don't remember exactly, maybe 15 to 18 months before we met in person at all. And so once we opened it up where everything was Zoom, our committees met on Zoom, everything was on Zoom, it was okay to be in Erdenheim or Flowertown or Winmore because you could be on Zoom. And what we tell people when they don't live within the city limits, when they're not along the Germantown Avenue corridor, is that we won't be holding programs. Now we do programs in person again. We won't be doing them in their community. They'll have to travel. And if that's okay, we're okay. We have a ride service, which definitely, it ceased during COVID because nobody would get in the car with anybody. And that made total sense. Right now, people haven't been asking for rides, but we have enough volunteers to offer many, many rides to people. We have changed the limit. It's a 6-mile radius of the intersection of Germantown Avenue and Gresham Valley Road.
okay.
And we hope that people will start taking advantage of that because it's a wonderful service.
Okay. Are there other sort of mutual supports that have come back online since the
Absolutely.
vaccine?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have 2 members who will come into your home, a house or an apartment, and do minor repairs at no cost. And they're both highly skilled. They're not professional electricians or plumbers or contractors, but they will come and they've repaired vacuums, and they've fixed a dishwasher door that wouldn't close. And I know this sounds funny, how many people does it take to change a light bulb, but somebody had a light in the ceiling and they could not change that light bulb, and carrying heavy things, taking air conditioners in and out of windows. And so that's a wonderful service. We provide friendly phone calls, which is just a supportive phone call by volunteer members who will check in if you would like that to happen. We have, gosh, I wish I had the list in front of me because we actually have a lot of services. We have no skilled staff, so we don't go into people's homes and provide social work services or anything like that. But we will.
Cat Care Collective, is that back up and running?
Yes, well, yes, it is. It's on a little bit shaky ground because our member Faye Ross, who was the power behind the Cat Care Co-op, moved to Cathedral Village. So she's a little bit out of that loop. She also no longer has a cat.
Oh.
But she is looking for somebody to actually take that role on. But yes, the Cat Care Co. Oh, I know now. I'm glad I thought of it. We can provide through some online platforms, one called Meal Train, one called Sign Up Genius. We can provide meals for somebody who's had surgery or is sick and could use some food. And actually, I know how that feels. For the first time in my life, this bug that I have, yesterday, I couldn't even get up and make myself toast. I felt so sick. I'm so much better due to drugs, thank goodness for medication. But I know what it's like to have to reach out and ask for help, which is hard. It's hard for all of us. We try to create a culture where asking for help is a good thing. And so we had a member a couple of years ago who had shoulder replacement surgery. She has a dog. She could not walk her dog for 6 weeks. We had members sign up to walk her dog 3 times a day for 6 weeks. So we can really help people with short-term support. It isn't ongoing. It isn't, I have a dog and I can never walk that dog again. It's short-term support. We had somebody that just went through breast cancer surgery, and we had meals, a dinner for her and her sister every day for 2 full weeks after her surgery. So we do that kind, we provide that kind of support.
Okay, great. So let's talk practicalities a little bit. You have just one membership level. There's not a tiered system.
You know, we try to keep it super simple because our paid staff, and she's not staff, she's, I guess, an independent contractor, is one person who's 10 hours a week, and she does our Sunday bulletin, which is an amazing piece that she sends out every Sunday with everything, links to everything, that's links and explanations to every program or event that's coming up, as well as some community events that people might want to know about. And then she does other things to help. She does all our online publicity. And so so our membership level is very, very simple. It's $125 a year for a single. It's $175 for a couple. As a single, I never understood why a couple should not have to pay, you know, for 2 people. But, you know, that's the way it is. That's how we were born. And we've never changed the fee structure since the beginning, since 2013. And, but we developed it's not really a sliding scale, but we don't want the dues to stand in anybody's way of joining. So people can join, no questions asked, no explanation. If the fee is a burden, pay what you can. We ask for at least $50. And we offer $50 one-year gift memberships and they've worked really well, where you could say, gosh, I have this neighbor and he or she is not ready to commit, but they're interested. I'm going to give them a one-year membership and see if they join. And frequently they do.
Wonderful. Wonderful. All right, let's talk a little bit about board structure. You've mentioned the staff, so let's go to the board. How many members on your board?
Yeah, 13 board members.
Okay,
And we have 13.
13. Okay.
We have a few who are rotating off. You get 3-year terms, so 9 years, which is plenty. And so we have a couple who are rotating off, and we have a couple more who we hope are going to be joining. So I expect it to be right around 11, 12. After we have an annual meeting every spring, we're having it in May, and that's when our board members get elected, where our officers of the board get elected. In NVN, what I've come to realize, I come from the nonprofit sector as an executive director, and there was a hierarchy. So the executive director hopefully would be very attentive and listen to everybody who worked in their agency, but the buck stopped there, and they made the decisions. NVN is not like that. As board president, I have no authority. I have no power. It's a flat organization, and that's a good thing. So we have a board, and the board is very active. We meet 9 times a year on Zoom, and we make sure the agency is fiscally solid. So we check our financials all the time. We have a balanced budget every year, and our budget's about $38,000 a year. And we get that from our dues, and we get that from a fundraiser we do in the fall of every year, and that balances our budget. The board does not supervise the committee chairs or the committees, but it offers support and coordination. We found that coordination among the committees is really key, because marketing PR needs to know what membership is doing to attract new members and work together. The small groups committee needs marketing PR because they want to market more small groups. And so the coordinating that, and we have to facilitate that from the board level, and we offer support. So right now we have a few committees that could really use more members, and because some members rotate off, which is what people should do. My belief is, at this age and stage in our life, what we do should bring us a lot of joy. And if you're on a committee and it no longer brings you joy, then you have a right to rotate off and let that seat be filled by somebody else for whom it will bring joy. One of the things I love about NVN, which is, I think, unique to at least to some villages, is that NVN can be anything a member wants it to be. We help to facilitate the people to create a group, a small group, a special interest group that interests them. I created one about knitting because I read an article in the New York Times that said it's good for your brain health. I don't knit, but I put out something. We have an electronic bulletin board that goes to all our members. I put something out. There were 6 responses. I'm learning how to knit. There was somebody who wanted to start a writing group. There is now a thriving writing group that had to temporarily close because they had too many people. So if you have an interest, it could be model trains, it could be singing, it could be ping pong, it could be whatever, we can help you start a group. And
Wonderful.
so NVN can meet your needs as far as interest. You know, research shows that it's through a sense of community and a sense of purpose that we, if we're blessed with good health, that we can age best. And NVN provides both of those, a sense of purpose, especially if you're working on a committee, and a sense of community.
Great. Wonderful. Well, you're
Excuse me,
a
Barbara-
wonderful
Barbara, can you-
spokesperson for NVN. No wonder you're president.
I believe in it so much. I moved here almost 8
Barbara,
years ago,
Barbara,
knowing
will you-
nobody except my daughter and her wife, and there's no way that I wanted them to be my only people here. So I joined NVN before I actually moved, and it is how I made really good friends. And speaking personally, it isn't that easy to make friends at our age. And so villages make it happen.
Okay. All right. So we're now going to move. I did thank I did thank Barbara at the end that got cut off. So I'm going to move now to talking a little bit about Shtetl 2.0 and how it's going to be both. We anticipate that it'll be similar to I'm sorry, I'm having a lot of problems here on the tech end. Give me a second here. Okay. And gonna move to talking about Shtetl 2.0. And
So Rivkah, why don't you take a second, and I'll just say from our planning that we've been really fortunate today to hear both from Jane Eleey and Penn's Village, and now from Barbara and this more local village concept, Northwest Village Network. And so it's, of course, like, how is Shtetl 2.0 going to collaborate, going to be our own organization? And I think that Rivkah is ready to tell us some about our own organizing and where we're going next here in about a few words, and then we'll break into some questions again. So are you ready, Rivkah?
I think I am. Let me spotlight myself.
Okay.
All right. All righty. So thank you for your patience with all the tech that is relatively new for me. I really appreciate that. So as I said, I'm gonna provide a short history of Shtetl 2.0, talk about how we expect to compare to other villages in Philadelphia, and then focus in on where we're at now and how we're moving forward. So I want to emphasize that Shtetl 2.0 has been an evolving project. We had our beginnings last spring when Betsy Teutsch, Chris Levin, and Connie Katz became aware that some frail elderly GJC members did not have adequate supports from their families, their friends, or the shul. So while addressing those members' immediate needs, they decided to enlarge the conversation with people they knew to have experience in working with elders or thriving solo and or building community. So with the addition of Rabbi Dale Friedman, Dick Goldberg, Rabbi Freddie Cooper, and myself, what we call the planning committee was born. Over the spring and summer, we decided to take a longer-term systemic view of boomers and older folks aging in Northwest Philly. We also decided to expand our scope to the entire Jewish community in the area, including GJC, Mishkan Shalom, Pnei Or, Folk Shul, as well as unaffiliated folks and those attending other shuls. It's probably the first time quite so comprehensive an outreach has been done in the Jewish community here. Using the proposal that is still available on our website, which is shtetl2.us, we sought the endorsement of the 4 congregations. We only asked that they publicize Shtetl 2.0 among their members and allow us to use their names in our PR. Just want to emphasize that this isn't a sponsorship or a financial commitment, although GJC has been very generous in offering us space and staff support for our meetings, and Mishkan and Folk Shul have offered the same. We sought additional planning committee members from the other 3 congregations, and we were delighted when Lynne Iser from Mishkan, Tobie Hoffman from Pnei Or, and Beth Ann Margolis-Rupp from Folk Shul joined us on the planning committee. We envisioned that Shtetl 2.0 would be Jewish cultural space, but we also were very consciously welcoming intermarried couples, others in Jewish households, and generally any fellow travelers comfortable in a Jewish context. We need all the friends we can get. To signify this, we took the full name Shtetl 2.0, Northwest Philly Jews and Friends Aging in Community. Last fall, the New York nonprofit Dorot agreed to collaborate with us to offer a 6-session online course that some of you may have been in, which focuses on aging in place, what individual households can do to remain in their homes. We envisioned that this course would be a precursor to the Shtetl 2.0 goal of aging in community. Dick Goldberg identified our 15 very generous breakout facilitators, some of whom are on this call today, and handled the PR, which attracted yet another planning committee, David Rosenberg. We were stunned when more than 50 people attended our informational meeting and more than 120 signed up for the course itself. Then we had our January 7th meeting, which some of you attended, which was our first program to look at what we would need to age in this community. And the working groups were then born. Since then, Margie Dubrow and Merle Savadow have also joined the planning committee. There is now a consensus among the planning committee members that the village model is appropriate for what we have in mind. And we have joined the national umbrella organization that's been mentioned, the Village to Village Network, on a provisional basis. So how do we envision that Shtetl 2.0, that our village will be similar to other villages, and how will it be, I want to say, special? Well, similar to most villages, we expect to provide mutual support that allows us to age in place. Services to individual households as needed, like transportation, help with minor household repairs, referrals to recommended providers, short-term help with errands, meals, or pet care, and the like. Then there are the things that will help us age in community, overcoming isolation and keep us connected with one another, such as chevra groups, also known as friendship groups or neighborly groups that meet regularly, interest groups of various kinds, similar to those Barbara mentioned, and all sorts of social, educational, and cultural programming that will keep us engaged with one another and with the world. So the next question is, how will Shtetl 2.0 be different, be special? Well, we envision 3 ways in which Shtetl 2.0 will have a distinctly Jewish flavor. First, Shtetl 2.0 will be unique in being rooted in Jewish values, customs, and concerns, thus providing our members with the comfort of familiarity, of knowing, and of being known. For example, our programs will be in tune with the cycles of the Jewish calendar, such as offering communal Shabbat dinners or perhaps Passover Seders. At communal meals, we will be sensitive to Jewish foodways. No one will have to ask if the soup has a meat stock or discover bits of bacon in the South. We will forefront Jewish cultural programs, celebrating our musicians, artists, and writers, while of course not excluding others. We do live in at least two civilizations. And we will draw on centuries of wisdom about aging. We will dip into Jewish legacy practices, such as writing ethical wills. We will know how to support, grieve, and console each other through time-honored practices, such as Shiva. Sadly, our Northwest Philly Jewish communities have been forced to do so repeatedly in the last several months and have risen heroically to the occasion. So secondly, many of us have simply spent much of our adult lives in Northwest Philly immersed in this vibrant Jewish community, or should I say communities. And as someone said recently, I just want to grow old with my friends. We want to be close to the people we share memories with, another way of knowing and being known. And third, this is where we step out of almost all the villages I've heard of. Centuries of Jewish social activism allow us to be chutzpahdik, really audacious in advocating even larger social change beyond the village itself to support all elders, in Northwest Philly, to counter the impediments of local geography and building styles, such as steep steps and limited first floor facilities, and the financial constraints due to recent gentrification. We will be exploring many housing options. These may include increasing affordable housing and alternative housing programs, such as roommate sharing and intergenerational housing. Some of this work is already underway in our Housing Options Working Group. This is a time for planning and preparation. So we will also look ahead to a time when Northwest Philly boomer generation will include a larger percentage of frail elderly. Therefore, we will proactively now explore social service supports that will allow all Northwest Philly elders to remain in their homes with safety and confidence. Now is the time to create the infrastructure to help us age safely and actively in the community. So that's our history and a vision for our future. And now, where are we today, this very day, in this evolving project? Well, we're not yet incorporated. We do not have bylaws, a board, or members, although we're expecting our planning committee to morph into a board and our working groups to become committees. We do not yet have either a nonprofit status or a fiscal sponsor who does. We do not yet have liability insurance or a bank account or operating funds. We are seeking to put all these things in place in the next few months. But until we do, what we are is an incredibly visionary, talented, energetic, and generous group of volunteers who are seeking to make Shtetl 2.0 a vibrant community in which to age. So now we're going to hear very briefly what some of our Shtetl 2.0 working group volunteers are currently exploring. Please consider if any of these projects call to you. If that's the case, please reach out to the convener who's going to present and whose contact information you will find in the chat in a moment, and will be also sent out after this session. Conveners, when I call your name, please first raise your electronic hand so I can find you and spotlight you, and then unmute and tell us what your working group is exploring in just 30 to 45 seconds. We really have about a minute per group, and it's going to take me just a minute to do this transition again. So, oh,
I spotlighted David.
Thank you. All right. Betsy, if you'll handle this, I'm going to call on people and let you spotlight them.
Great.
Thank you. That's a real help. David Rosenberg, you are first. Thank you.
Hi, everyone, and just want to thank Rivkah, Jane, and Barbara for a really informative, interesting morning, and for everyone who was planning this program. The structure committee is really involved in helping to focus on implementing Shtetl 2.0, the actual structure of the organization. The sort of the key items that we're working on right now are one, creating a mission statement for Shtetl 2.0. Two, focusing on sort of like the membership structure and the fiscal sponsor, and then actually also the sort of the geographic catchment area. And I think, if you have experience in nonprofit management, nonprofit law, and fundraising, we would love to have you involved with the structure committee. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And now I'm going to call on Merle Savato. Merle, if you're here, please raise your hand. Yeah.
Margie had agreed that she was going to
Yes.
present, but that's okay. I can do it too. So we have been working very hard on the program committee. We are going to be the program committee, but right now we're the working group. We're calling ourselves the fun committee. We are the social, educational, and cultural committee. And we have been collecting activities from going to the theater to having community Shabbat dinners and brainstorming them and prioritizing them. And Paul and I are going to host the first of our member Shabbat dinners, which we're going to restrict as a pilot just to our small committee. And it's going to be this Friday night at our house. And we've come up with lots and lots of wonderful possible activities, and we're working through who's going to lead them, who's going to participate, and who's going to help.
Okay, and if you have interest in any of those, please contact Merle or Margie. Okay, Paul, we'll go right back to spotlighting the same screen. Paul?
Yeah, hi. We're with the resources committee, and I have been looking at the directory that you compiled for us. It's quite wonderful, pretty comprehensive in terms of the categories. I think a big question here is how soon do we start trying to establish relationships with existing organizations in the community before we're actually quite formalized. So I know there are some groups that, as I said, you were pretty comprehensive. The one group that was not listed in any of this stuff that we've done was the Unitarian Universalist House, which has an outreach program for seniors regardless of affiliation. So I think we need to meet or maybe some of you folks from the board to help us decide how soon to begin reaching out to some of these organizations.
Okay. Thank you, and we will be doing that, Paul. Next is Joyce Silverman. Joyce, you need to unmute.
Okay, I'm with the senior support, and we had a lot of items up on our easel, and many of them are things that will be in the future. So what we focused on is what I am, and people have mentioned today, Jewish elders in community. How do we form a community? So we've started amongst our own selves that we will have our community. And I think most of us on this group in our little group, do not really know each other. So we are starting by having our own little Hevra. We will be reaching out at the beginning once a month on Sunday mornings online. And hopefully when the weather is better, we will be getting together in person. Because I think the general sense, as I said, that we need to form a community. We need to have people we're comfortable speaking with, comfortable asking for help. So that is our immediate goal, to become more familiar and establish a community.
Wonderful. Thank you, Joyce. And now Sue Sussman with Exploring Housing Options.
We are looking at elder-friendly housing options in the greater Northwest area, and we've identified so far the idea of infiltrating, on the one hand, existing apartment buildings where a number of people would get together and decide that they'd like to live in that particular apartment building, or alternatively, for people who are interested in buying in existing condos. And that's because we know from experience that it takes a long time and a considerable amount of money to build something where nothing had existed previously. So if you're interested in exploring elder-friendly housing options, we would welcome you to join this group.
Wonderful. Thank you. Right. So I'm going to say that there is one more working group that is forming. I think it's obvious by now that we are going to need money in order to create a real village, not just an aspirational one. You've heard what 38,000 a year can support at NVN, and you've heard what 140 or 150,000 can support at Penn's Village. So if you have any experience in fundraising, in grant writing, schnorring of any kind, please let us. And that's how it's a Jewish village, right? We're going to schnorr. And if you're interested in helping to seed this endeavor with either a gift or a loan, or know people who could, please let us know that as well. Dick Goldberg, whose contact information is also in the chat, is the person to contact for that. So thank you. And now Lynn is going to help us field questions to either me or other members of the planning group who may be situated to answer the questions. Lynn, you want to take it away?
Absolutely. Okay, everybody, we're back together again. So if you have questions for the planning group or questions just about Shtetl, raise your hand. Sue, your hand is still up. I don't know if it's because you have a question.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. I see Ellie's hand up, and if you need to or want to, you can put questions in the chat and we'll take a look at those as well. So Ellie, why don't you unmute yourself and let's hear what you are curious about. Oops, you muted.
There we go. I know that I am. I had to switch views in order to unmute. Pardon. One question is for the working groups, when you come, like everything is in this brainstorming generosity stage of expansion, when it comes time to make decisions, I just want to say from an organizational standpoint, is there any interest in a policy for forward thinking about conflict resolution and methods to make a decision that are agreed upon? These are things that every organization need to tackle. And I just want to share that the earlier that you explore what will work for us, for you, for this, the better off you deal with known issues. You know, remember when one of our speakers said they're kind of a late adolescent or early whatever, you know, so we're going to be preschoolers and we got to figure out how to play nice in the sandbox as we go together. So that's number one. Number two is I would love to share a fundraising method that is fun, that I can have some part with, but it needs someone with better executive function and data sheet skill than me. And the last one is, can one join more than one committee? Now I'm shutting up. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your first comment about decision-making. It's a really important one, and I think we'll just toss it over to David to put on their parking lot for the governance committee. And I don't see any reason why you can't serve on more than one committee. If you have enough energy for more than one committee, it'd be really wonderful. You have a lot of excellent ideas, and would you please take your fundraising idea and send it to Dick Goldberg, and maybe you could work with him on that, since that is his corner of our field right now. So thank you for all those comments. I see Rivkah is still shaking her head. And great. Other questions? Other questions here? Can you raise your hands?
There's a
Okay.
question in the chat.
Oh, yeah, thank you. There's a question in the chat. Is there a sense of how many members are necessary to be viable? We don't know that yet because we are working on putting together an initial budget, and that budget will tell us like basic things about to incorporate what that might cost, or to be part of what some of our initial costs might be before we even hire staff or build. So, build a structure. So the evolving word is really important. We're evolving, and as we do, we'll know more, but we're all part of this evolving process right now, and it's great to have the questions and the faces and your needs come forward. There is not a date or time for our next meeting, but you will get a follow-up email after today's meeting, probably tomorrow. That will give you the names of the conveners, as well as maybe a couple of websites, the recording, and you're on the email list, so you will hear about it as soon as we determine it. And I am now going to ask Sir and Yosef, I see your hand up, and then Ellie Seif's hands up, and quick questions, and let's.
Ellen Stryker also had a comment.
Oh, good.
Just wondering about, because some people have responded when I said about, is there a committee looking at services and the different models of sharing services and what have you, particularly intergenerational one. There's one that I'm going to be introducing called care pooling that's 30 years old, and it's an interesting way of intergenerationally matching up people and needs and what have you. Is there a committee?
Yosef, that might work well with our assessing Northwest Philadelphia assets and resources, because that might start focusing into what kind of services we need, but you can talk to them, and then maybe we'll keep thinking about this.
Right.
That works.
Yeah.
So
Good.
the other hand that wasn't raised here.
Good. I'm going to move on to Ellie. Oh, did you have another question, Sarah?
I did.
Okay.
So I seem to notice that at our meeting last time, there was a group on people who are doing caregiving for other family members, and it didn't appear today. So I'm wondering if that's still happening. And the other is a comment how different these two groups we saw today, not only in the money, but the hierarchy. And so I'm just so glad, I'm grateful that we're looking at different models. Thank you. Love you guys.
You're welcome. And that question about caregiving, I don't know where it goes. Maybe that just keeps on to our parking lot for the moment as we continue to grow. I don't know that we're ready to provide caregiving as yet.
No, that's not what I meant. I didn't mean providing, but for people who are already doing it.
Like a support group.
Support group, yes.
Okay. Take a note. Ellie Seif, you have your.
Actually, it's
not
Elliot. It's Elliot. What I haven't heard today is at least from my perspective, is the connection between Shtetl 2.0 and the four synagogues, or the four organizations that are it seems like the foundation of the organization. I don't hear any connections being made with those synagogue organizations. Some of them already have some services for elderly. Is there going to be a strong connection, and they have administrative arms too, which might be useful? I haven't heard any of that, so I'm curious to know what those connections might be or some thoughts about them.
You know, that's a good question. Ellen Steiger asked something similar, that our synagogues provide some of these services. I'm concerned about duplication of efforts. So I think that one of the questions might be, how do we coordinate with the local synagogues, not duplicate efforts, but perhaps refer people when it's most reasonable. But that can also be put on our parking lot right now of how to.
And also, is there any way to use their administrative arms as a helpful tool? I mean, I know they're very much overwhelmed often, but nevertheless, they have that already in place. And maybe
Well, I think,
some extension, they can also be part of the Shtetl 2.0 service providers.
yeah. So you partially answered your own question, that they're all overwhelmed. What they are doing for us is we do use their Google list or their own networking for our publicity at this point, and a couple of the communities have offered us a place to meet when it's appropriate. So we've received those services. I think that this is an ongoing area for investigation and for our own research. Busted, Tobie. Was that, and we'll keep talking about it. Are we good? Do we need, okay.
No, thank you.
Yeah. I think it's important to raise up. Sam, I see your hand up, and Margie, your hand was up, but you disappeared. So Sam, this might be the last question, but go ahead. Oh.
Actually, it's not Sam, it's Connie.
Although it has his name and picture, it's always a problem. Go ahead, Connie. Nice to have you.
We're on two different gizmos, and he had his thumb up because he's very enthused about everything that's going on. So as I'd love to do, which is volunteer for him, I think Dick should give him a call about fundraising. We know he is a guru at that. And I would also like to say that Merle Savadow and Margie should give me a call, because to follow up what Ellen and Elliot were talking about, Women of GJC for the last couple of years has started up just a host of different activities. And it would be at least one place to start making connections among our different organizations. And I'd be happy to help work on that.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure.
All right. We're committed to ending on time, folks, especially on such a beautiful day. It was, yes. So we're going to end in a couple of minutes. If we didn't have time for your questions, this is a great time to put your question in the chat. We have another 2 or 3 minutes here as we close out. So please put your questions in the chat. It would be, let's see, what do I want to say here? Okay, for you who are super excited about this project and want to help as we evolve, I really encourage you to sign up or call people to help with some of these teams and committees, and you'll get that in your email list. We are a community, and it takes a village to build a community. So every one of you has something that you can add to this project. We're also looking in particular now for someone who is experienced with Zoom enough to set up Zoom meetings along with registrations and confirmation. So that's a little bit of a skill. So if you have that Zoom skill and you can help us to do that, please put your name in the chat right now or get in touch with Rivkah or myself, because they're trying to be able to send out automatic confirmations of your Zoom registration.
We're also trying to take the load off Rivkah, who
we're also trying to take the load off.
Worked so hard, but that's not any way to move forward.
Thank you, Betsy. And we're all trying to learn new skills, like how to use Zoom more effectively. Okay, there is a request if you're concerned about the continuance of the SEPTA Chestnut Hill West Line. This could be the beginning of an elder activist team, and that was brought up by Sura Orgus. So maybe you want to start raising that and showing up for that kind of activism, because we want our SEPTA line so that we can continue to get to downtown Philadelphia easily. And are there any quick takeaways? Just 1 or 2 words that somebody would like to share. You can put it in the chat or raise your hand. I'd love to hear it. Margie, you raising your hand? Or is it up?
Yes, yes. I want to just offer a takeaway for very masterful creation and facilitation of this meeting for everyone, for Rivkah, for all the behind the scenes and the work that you did pulling in interviews. And Lynn, I think you've done wonderful facilitation. Covered a lot in 2 hours. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you for taking the time on a beautiful day. I love Betsy's comment of wow. That's totally in my skill set. So a couple more comments. Thank you all. Fantastic. Thank you for the hard work. I want to thank everybody for the hard work they're going to put in, because you're so inspired from today and you have so many ideas percolating, and you'll talk about it with your friends as you take walks. So sit outside in the sun today and enjoy this beautiful day. And we'll let you know when the next meeting is. Anything else? We good? You want to wave goodbye? Bye. Two-handed. Thank you.
Did you just flick my hand off there?
And I can